Say a few things. Canadians are justifiably proud of our immigration system. It has made our economy the envy of the world. It's how we've built strong, diverse communities. It's how we've demonstrated that differences can and must be a source of strength, not a source of weakness for communities and society.
That our immigration consensus is something that's under stress and under threat, I'd even say. It's still there. It shouldn't be confused with unanimity, which often people do. There's never been unanimity on this, and certainly our research shows that there are segments of society that are against immigrants. And that exists in Canada too.
We've lost control of our border, lost control of immigration, lost control of our finances. And that is why today I am calling on the government to fix Trudeau's broken border.
The tension between the Liberal government's immigration policies and its opposition has reached a limit, resulting in a heated debate. Pierre Poilievre criticized the Liberal government's handling of immigration, specifically targeting the immigration minister.
Can't see the value of homes and food that don't exist after 8 years. They have a food program which after 8 years has no food, a affordable housing program which has doubled housing costs. They're not worth the cost, and now their deficits are driving up the interest obligations for the average family. For a family with a $500,000 mortgage, deficits are adding 10 grand in additional interest payments per year. When will they realize that after 8 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost?
The honourable member wants to talk about homes that don't exist. Let's talk about the 800,000 affordable housing units that were lost when he was last in government. Let's talk about the fact that when he was actually housing minister, he got 0 apartments built with the support of the federal government. Let's look at the fact that across the entire country, he was able to get a total of only 6 affordable housing units built. Mr. Speaker, he talks a big game, but he does literally nothing for the people who need to get into the housing market. We've got new measures that help people who are renting now, and measures that will make it easier to save up for a down payment and to reduce your monthly mortgage costs if you want to own a home in this country.
Proof this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost is that he picked the most incompetent immigration minister in Canadian history and put him in charge of housing. The guy who lost track of 1 million people, who's blamed by his fellow cabinet colleagues for causing the housing crisis, and who presides over the most expensive housing market in Canadian history. When I was minister, the average rent was $950, and we built hundreds of thousands of units at that affordable price. So why won't he learn from our smashing success in 2015 in keeping costs low by axing the tax and building the home?
Poilievre's remarks were not merely about the technicalities of immigration policies, but a broad indictment of the entire Liberal approach to governance. As we move forward, I'd like to ask you a quick favor to subscribe and like this video. It takes just a second and helps us so much. The immigration minister, in Poilievre's eyes, is proof that Trudeau's government has failed. With immigration numbers at historic highs and social systems buckling under the strain, the Liberal government's handling of this issue has been called into question. Critics argue that the ambitious goals set by Trudeau and his team have not been matched by the necessary resources, policies, or practical solutions to make them a reality. When Justin Trudeau first took office, he outlined ambitious humanitarian goals that seemed to embody the progressive vision of a Canada open to the world. One of the most notable promises was to welcome a significant number of Syrian refugees, a move hailed as a moral and compassionate response to a global crisis. Perhaps the most symbolic moment of overpromise was Trudeau's infamous "Welcome to Canada" tweet. While this was an expression of goodwill to those seeking asylum, it created a surge of illegal border crossings. One of the most critical issues raised during the debate between Pierre Poilievre and a member of the House of Commons, Sean Fraser, was the housing crisis, a problem that has intensified under the Liberal government's watch. The Liberal government's promises to build affordable housing have largely fallen flat, with the country facing the highest housing costs in its history. Many critics, including Poilievre, argue that the government has been slow to respond to the growing need for affordable homes, leading to a situation where the housing market is out of reach for average Canadians. Poilievre, drawing on his own experience as housing minister, took the opportunity to compare the current situation with the successes of his time in office. Under his leadership, Canada saw the construction of thousands of affordable housing units, with a focus on creating homes that were accessible to a broad spectrum of the population. In comparison, Trudeau's tenure has been characterized by the loss of 800,000 affordable housing units, according to Sean Fraser. The economic burdens of the Liberal government's policies are another contention raised during the debate. One of the most direct consequences of the government's fiscal approach has been the rising cost of living, particularly in terms of mortgage payments. The Trudeau administration's growing deficits have led to a sharp increase in interest rates, directly affecting Canadian families, many of whom are already struggling to make ends meet. Poilievre seized on this point, arguing that the government's deficit spending is driving up interest payments for households across the country. For example, a family with a $500,000 mortgage is now facing an additional $10,000 per year in interest payments due to the government's fiscal mismanagement. At the heart of the debate lies a fundamental question: who is truly benefiting from the current government's policies? In the debate, Poilievre also focused on the leadership of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. In his counter-arguments, he painted Trudeau as someone who has become more capable of maintaining a pop star persona than of providing effective governance. Poilievre's criticism of Trudeau's government also reveals a party deeply divided internally, with growing dissatisfaction among members of the Liberal Party. The external political atmosphere is no less volatile. Public confidence in Trudeau's leadership is eroding rapidly, and with it, the trust Canadians once had in the Liberal Party's ability to govern effectively.
Before he does, I want to say a few things. Canadians are justifiably proud of our immigration system. It has made our economy the envy of the world. It's how we've built strong, diverse communities. It's how we've demonstrated that differences can and must be a source of strength, not a source of weakness for communities and society. Immigration is vital to our future. And as a federal government, we have to make sure that that pride, that faith in immigration is not undermined. We've been through a hard time these past few years. COVID stopped everything. When we started to emerge from it, workers were in short supply, things we needed weren't going to market, and prices started going up. So we acted. We made sure that our businesses had workers. Our economy got moving again. We actually experienced the fastest jobs recovery after the pandemic in the G7. Now, it is time to make the adjustments to stabilize the immigration system that we need and get it working right for Canadians, for right now. Today, we're announcing that we will reduce the number of immigrants we bring in over the next 3 years, which will result in a pause in the population growth over the next 2 years. This builds on our previously announced measures to cap international student permits and reform the temporary foreign worker program, all of which we are implementing with a single aim: stabilize our population growth to give all levels of government time to catch up, time to make the necessary investments in healthcare, in housing, in social services to accommodate more people in the future. Our immigration system has always been responsible, and it has always been flexible. And so we are acting today. Because in the tumultuous times as we emerged from the pandemic, between addressing labor needs and maintaining population growth, we didn't get the balance quite right. With the plan we're announcing today, along with previously announced measures, we're making our immigration system work better.
The impact of the current immigration policies and their wider consequences on Canadian society is deeply felt in various sectors, with the most immediate effects observed in public systems that are already stretched to their limits. Healthcare and social services, which were already under pressure before the recent surge in population, now face the additional strain of accommodating a growing number of immigrants. Hospitals, for example, are overwhelmed with a constant influx of patients. Waiting times have increased, and access to essential services like mental health care and emergency treatment has become more limited. Social services, which aim to support the most vulnerable in society, find themselves similarly stretched thin, as they are tasked with assisting both long-standing citizens and new arrivals who require integration assistance, language programs, and other support services. The exploitation of the immigration system further worsens these challenges, particularly through the actions of bad actors who take advantage of Canada's relatively open immigration policies. One example of this exploitation is the rise of fake colleges, which prey on international students seeking to gain entry into Canada. These institutions, often offering substandard education and little to no real opportunity for their students, operate in the shadows, contributing to the undermining of the integrity of Canada's immigration system. When these fake colleges fail to provide genuine education, students are left stranded in a foreign country without the skills or qualifications they hope to gain, further burdening Canada's public services and healthcare system as they become reliant on social support. Poilievre argues that immigration policies should be recalibrated to stabilize the number of new arrivals and prevent further strain on the country's infrastructure. This includes addressing the exploitation of the immigration system, like the fraudulent use of student visas and the infiltration of fake educational institutions. With housing costs continuing to rise, Poilievre believes that any meaningful immigration policy must take into account the existing pressures on the housing market. As such, Poilievre advocates for policies that actively encourage the construction of affordable homes, while also ensuring that existing resources are used efficiently to address the needs of all Canadians. Alongside housing, Poilievre proposes reducing government-imposed costs, which he argues would allow families to keep more of their hard-earned money and contribute to reducing financial strain. His plan includes revising regulations that increase the cost of living, from taxes to bureaucratic barriers, to make Canada more affordable for citizens and new immigrants alike. In terms of shaping future policies, this debate plays a role in steering public discourse on immigration and housing. Poilievre's critiques and proposals will likely influence the way Canadians think about their country's future, particularly in terms of managing demographic shifts and balancing the need for social services with the demands of a growing population. The discussion is also setting the stage for potential political shifts, as dissatisfaction with the current administration's handling of these issues could pave the way for a broader change in political leadership. The questions raised in this debate are not only about the specifics of immigration and housing policy, but also about the fundamental direction Canada is heading in under the Liberal government. As these issues continue to develop, the question remains, what do you think? Should Canada recalibrate its immigration policies to better balance the needs of both newcomers and long-standing citizens? Is the current leadership capable of guiding Canada through the challenges ahead, or is it time for a new direction? Your thoughts are important in this ongoing conversation. Feel free to share them in the comments.